When you unplug from escapism, you open yourself up to help from spirit. This episode is a continuation of my previous one, You Better Be Lightning, because damn, y'all, the spirits are speaking to me. And those voices are exactly what this is about. And when I say spirits, I mean ancestors, not just my own, but those of the collective, our human ancestors, as well as spiritual guides, nature guides, all of that. In many of my episodes, including the last one, I encourage you to take steps toward who you are, toward planting seeds, toward composting the rotten things into hope, seeing what you can do with the difficulties and challenges you've been handed. But I want to take a moment to encourage you that there are some spirits speaking to you right now. And the invitation in this episode is to ask yourself, who could that be? Because I felt called to record this because I know there's some people out there who need to listen. There's someone who's been trying to get your attention, in some of your cases, multiple someones. And to help you understand and know where to look, I'm going to share one of my experiences. So I was thinking today and talking to my husband because this Andrea Gibson thing has really been bothering me. I feel the loss of that remarkable poet, even though I didn't know until a year later, because there was some guilt that came with that of like, how did I not know that they died? You know, it's been a whole year and I didn't know. And the reason I found out is because of something that popped up in my news feed that told of their death. And I was like, wait, what? And so then I dived in, but then that also brought me back to their work. And so as I was thinking today and talking with my husband, I thought, maybe the time is now. Maybe there's a reason that their death was brought to my attention now. And it's because, just from my experience, right? Like their death and their life is not all about me. I'm just talking about my experience with it. Okay. So please just know this is me just sharing an experience I have with finding out about this loss. Finding out about their loss also opened me up to so many more gifts of their work. It opened me up to what they left behind, which is very much alive. They left so many videos on their social media. They left new work for people to follow that's incredible, transformative. And the really cool thing is that their wife is still managing their Facebook page. I don't know what beyond that they're managing because Facebook is really the only form of social media that I use, but their wife is still managing their page. And so there's new content or reshared content of Andrea Gibson that's still out there and alive and speaking to me now. And that line that I read to you in the last episode, which was, if you are going to be anything in the world tonight, you better be lightning. You better find something in you honest enough to strike them. That was from their book, You Better Be Lightning. The poem isn't called You Better Be Lightning. The poem is actually called What Love Is. But that line about you better be lightning, you better find something in you honest enough to strike them. That took on a new meaning. Returning to it now took on a new meaning for me because of some of the experiences I've had in the last year. Because of dreams that I've had, quite honestly. The last time I picked up this book was over a year ago, up until last night when I picked it up again after learning of their death. And things have changed since then. My mind has expanded since then. And this is the beauty of personal growth, is that sometimes coming home to ourselves, finding out how our passion and drive and gifts can help the collective is returning to some things that helped us with growth in the past, but with new eyes. Remember how I said in the last episode to maybe take a look at some of your journal entries? Maybe some of you need to look at the past with new eyes. Or maybe when you look at the past now, after the growth that you've experienced, you will see something in a new light. It will give you some new insights. This is the power of spirit. And it's growing right alongside all of the invasive patriarchal weeds of our time. Andrea Gibson is very much alive, as is their work. And I can't encourage you enough to go check it out. Another thing that appeared in my news feed, and again, I don't spend a whole lot of time on social media, but just there have been a couple things that have pulled me in. It was this post from a Mighty Girl, not an actual Mighty Girl, but it's this online group, and it was sharing how JD Vance's toxic book that he just released called Communion um, actually put a book titled Communion by Bell Hooks, the author, the Black feminist author Bell Hooks, on the bestsellers list for the first time. Now, this was a book that Bell Hooks published decades ago. You know, it's called, or maybe it was 2002. I think it was in 2002 oh my God, which is decades ago. Now that I think about it, I forgot my age for a second. But Bell Hooks is this author's pen name, like the name that she uses for her books. And she wrote a book called Communion. That's all about how women have been conditioned to seek love from outside of themselves and the power that we can reclaim when we seek it inside ourselves again. And I read this informational piece about how because people were looking for JD Vance's book, they instead stumbled across Bell Hooks's book. And now sales are skyrocketing. There is so much power growing right alongside some of these monsters and their ways. And I can't help but notice this resurrection of female. Well, Andrea Gibson didn't identify as female, but didn't identify as male either. But I am thinking of Andrea as well. But Andrea plus all these female voices that seem to just be rising right now, and many of them are rising from beyond the grave. When we step outside of escapism and connect to the voices that have been calling us, it spreads roots for even more connections. I brought up Chani Nicholas, okay? Like I have her book, You Were Born for This, because I heard her on Jay Shetty. Okay, well, after reading Chani's book, then I wanted to listen to her podcast. So when we seek out these tools for personal growth, they have a natural way of building on each other. Just like destructive things can spread and become invasive, so can healing things become expansive and abundant when we step into them. So by listening to Jay Shetty, I was then connected to Chani Nicholas, and then I was connected to her book. And this actually worked out because guess what? Sometimes we outgrow our mentors. I will always admire and respect Jay Shetty, but I was starting to outgrow some of his lessons, and some of his lessons began to not apply to me so much anymore. But he introduced me to the next stage of my growth, which I then took. And because I read Chani's book and started interacting with her app, Chani, well, then I was connected to activists such as this one, Marsha P. Johnson, another female voice coming from beyond the grave. And I connected with Marsha because Chani was talking about her on her app and all of the activism and power that she displayed during the Stonewall riots and with making important steps towards equal rights that people always should have had. And then as soon as I started reading this book and you were on the journey with me, I felt something very spiritual. Again, it's like this collective power of female voices rising and encouraging us, those of us who are still on this plane, to reclaim our own power and to use our voices. And their power is very much with us. Okay, so then I was watching another Chani video where she was talking with some of her employees about Pallas Athena and the role that Pallas Athena play, or not Pallas Athena, Black Moon Lilith. She did this video about Black Moon Lilith. And I guess I don't know for sure if it was some of her employees. I think one of them is. The point is, she was in this online discussion with some of her collaborative people. I don't know who they were to her, but they were great. And they were talking about Black Moon Lilith and people who have Black Moon Lilith placements in certain areas of their chart, and they brought up Audre Lorde. Okay. And I had heard of Audre Lorde before, actually, on Ginny in Georgia, of all places, because this very book, Sister Outsider, was mentioned on Ginny in Georgia, but I was not in the state of mind where I was ready to receive that wisdom. But I was when I heard about this on Shani. So then I was led to this book. And I knew there was some wisdom, some voices that I needed to hear. And so I went and got it. Okay. And so all of these spirits, the spiritual, because it's not just the spirits of these remarkable women who've passed, it's remarkable women and folks who've passed. It's also the spirits of women who are still here. Chani has a spirit, and she shares the passion and drive behind that all the time. I have my own spirit that receives this knowledge and uses what I can, my platforms, to share it as well. I'm feeling sad about all of these women who I never got to meet who left behind their wisdom, but I also know that their wisdom is very much alive, as are their spirits, and they're speaking to us now, just like yours is. And so this is an invitation to integrate spirit, the mystical, the magical, into the work that you're doing. A Dakota teacher taught me that we put our energy into what we make. So when we take time to listen to wisdom, like Chani's wisdom, or we take time to read Audre Lorde's work, or Marsha P. Johnson's work, or anything, well, Tourmaline's work about Marsha P. Johnson, we open ourselves up to their energy. And we work with it, just like we work with the planets and astrology. It's all energy and it's all connected, and big things can appear quote unquote small, depending on your perspective. So if we're looking at like the planets from here, right? If you look at the moon, it's almost like you could put the moon in your pocket. It looks small, but it's massive. It's powerful. Its energy moves the earth. This same principle can be applied to the books that we read. This is a tiny little thin book. Okay, this worked out perfectly because look at the moon is on it. This is what I mean about the spiritual. I didn't even plan that, okay? So this looks like a thin little book, but it has the power of the moon in it, the power of our emotion, our bodies, our spirits, and what they can speak. So things that are big, massive, abundant, transformative can appear small, but that doesn't mean they are small. They're small enough for us to grasp, to hold, to connect with, but they're big enough to create change, to move the world. Open yourself up to what your spirit might be trying to tell you, or what the spirits of our ancestors might be trying to tell us. I was not blood related to Marsha P. Johnson or Audre Lorde, but I was related to them in that they were human and I am human, and we are collectively connected. So when I say ancestors, I don't just mean your actual bloodline. I mean our fellow humans who came before us and were gracious enough to leave their wisdom with us. And when you open yourself up to one form of wisdom, the spirits will answer. They'll find you. They will help you grow. Let's not limit our spiritual experience to hauntings, to seeking out, malignant things, malignant forces, and thinking that's all there is to spirit. No, spirit is alive. It's in our ancestors. It's in our own hearts. We are spirit. It's in the things that grow, the plant life of the world, the animals, those we love, the sky, the planets. It's all spirit. It's all energy, and it's all connected, and it's all working with us and for us to help us build a new world. And all you have to do to engage with it is take that first step toward that thing that's been speaking to you. You know what it is. Maybe it's in the form of a book. Maybe it is something that popped up in your news feed that doesn't lead you to more scrolling, but leads you to deep excavation, maybe in a book, maybe in a conversation with a loved one. This is how you know the difference, because The psychic Laura Lynn Jackson once told me that sometimes our spirit guides, or she didn't tell me, sorry, she told me, and that she said it in a public interview, not me directly. But this is what I mean about spirit speaking. Here I'm thinking like, oh, she said it to me personally, but it's like, no, she said it in an interview, but I felt it personally. So she said that spirits can speak to us through our news feeds sometimes. And I was like, I don't know about that because there's a lot that's toxic about scrolling, and that's how the robot monsters get us to spend money and lose our willpower and all that stuff. And all that's true. But just like my point about, JD Vance's toxic thing right here, right? Like his toxic thing opened the way for Bell Hooks's voice to be resurrected. Now it was her energy, not his, but it's like he unintentionally kind of created this space for her to be resurrected, which means these powerful spirits like Bell Hooks can work with the mistakes of the monsters. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And so to get back to my point about the newsfeed thing, it's like even though news feeds can be toxic, the spirits can still work with that. And the way to tell if you're just getting pulled into doom scrolling or if you're being led to something powerful is if it actually gets you off the screen. Okay, so like in the case of Andrea Gibson, what coming across the article about their death led me to was picking up their book again. It led me to a conversation with my husband. It led me to some journaling. It led me to some just rereading of one line because one line is incredibly powerful. So that's how you know, because maybe there is something in your news feed that's been speaking to you. And the way to know, again, if it's something healing is if it actually gets you off the screen, if it gets you to talk more openly with a loved one, if it sparks creativity in you, if it leads you to a book, if it leads you to something creative, it might be a spirit speaking to you. And I invite you to open to that. Because the other thing that's been happening too is I just as these books, this knowledge started flowing to me, because I believe that every single one of these books was something that came to me via spirit. And I just couldn't help but think how I've sort of been led from one thing to another, even to pick this up again, right? Like I've been talking to you about Circe, and Madeline Miller is still very much alive and still actively writing. But I was brought back to this fictional book because there's something that I need to look at with fresh eyes from this. All of these female voices have just been speaking to me via the written word, okay? Like the patriarchal lies, the show is not all that's out there. All of this is so alive. The energy of these remarkable people is alive. For real. It's our job to just pick up the book, to listen, to pay attention to the spirit that might have been speaking to us. This is part of how we compost the rotten things into growth. We allow the spirits of those who are trying to help us to spark something in our own, because the beauty of their creativity is that it will spark something in you. It will show you what your light can do. And I'm telling you this from direct experience. Every creative person who I've ever learned about has always sparked something in me. It's always sparked, oh, yeah, okay. Well, this person was a comedian and they're talking about fear and how fear actually drove them to create the comedy that they did because they were dealing with a fear that they had. They were confronting a fear they had. Well, how can I confront a fear that I have? And that comedian's work motivated me. Oh, what's his name? Sorry, as I've been telling you this, I've been trying to remember his name. And it's like right here, and I'm gonna probably think of it right at the end of the episode. But the point is, this comedian's work with fear in his comedy led me to, it was an important piece of me writing Monsters. It gave me some insights about how to write my novella Monsters. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to open yourself up to the spirits that are trying to work with you, because I think that it's how we're going to heal the world. Open yourself up to our ancestors, those who are trying to speak to us, those whose wisdom can help us now via the wisdom they left behind. I truly believe a lot of these powerful female voices are being resurrected right now. They are. They're coming back. And Andrea's work is so powerful too. If there's anybody who can teach you how to live life powerfully through obstacles, it's Andrea. And this isn't the only book of poetry they have. They have a ton, and they have a ton of videos too. So Andrea Gibson, poet, look it up. You can, this is how you spell their name. It probably shows up backwards, but maybe that'll be even more of a challenge for you. Okay. So I'm going to end today with something that I wrote on a piece of paper. Okay. I wrote it in purple, so you probably can't really see it, but this is something I wrote and taped up on my wall because it was a way that Spirit was speaking to me that helped me to heal some wounds that I had and to compost some pain that I had. And I just feel called to share it with you now because there's someone who needs to hear this. I am learning that beautiful things can grow from moments of the most disgusting, devastating destruction. And I would like to hope, in fact, I think I believe, that my worst moments could perhaps have led to something better for those I hurt and for me. Shame is not the end. I won't look back on myself with bitterness. I will remember my friends, those forces of light that always guarded me, even especially when I couldn't see hope. I wrote that about 3 years ago. And it's interesting when I look back on it now, just writing this down kind of set me on a journey too. There's something powerful that comes from writing things down. And these pieces about learning about beautiful moments growing from devastating destruction. I mean, that is the nature of our world. I hope we can create a world where everybody is safe and can thrive. But the reality is that's not where we are now. So we have to look for the remarkable things that grow in the midst of the monsters. And I truly believe that these voices are rising because change is here, because they are trying to speak to the women of this age. They are trying to encourage the women of this age to reclaim who they are, to reclaim their power. And that begins with you listening. That begins with you taking a step towards those who inspire you instead of those who drain you. A step towards your voice, your gifts, your wisdom is listening. Because there are spirits that are trying to speak to you. Please share this with someone who you know who needs to hear it. And in the meantime, thanks for coming.